Hi, good evening everyone. Charlotte here from Enriching Environments on Tuesday evening here in Dubai. What are we? The 23rd of November. And this evening we are going to be talking about boys. All about boys. Hi, Tony Maria. Thank you for joining. Hi, Diane. Nice to see you again. Hi, Nada. Hi, everyone joining. Thank you so much. I'll just let everyone come in and you can send me an emoji or a wave or something or a word or a sentence to let me know how you're feeling today, how your day's been. I'm trying to wave to you all, but sometimes, it doesn't work so well. And so let's get started. I feel super. And I've managed to wave at Nada, but not at everyone else. You see, it's really strange. I'm pressing it, but it's not working. Boys, this evening, this is, thank you for the hearts. This is a really fab topic, talking about boys. I'll do one on girls as well, hey, but I think in general we can mainly agree that boys can be seen as more problematic, can be perceived as more problematic because in general they are very, very physical, and often we both either parent, whether the male parent or the female parent, or two males or two female parents, any parent can find it challenging to know how to deal with that physical side, because it's one thing when they're little and we can remove them from certain situations when they're being a bit too rough. And then as they get older, that gets harder and that gets more challenging because they're bigger and they're stronger. And at some point, we're not going to be able to contain them physically. So then we're sort of left with this situation of, oh, okay, what do we do now? And, there's such sad statistics about men and mental health and suicide of young men. Broadly speaking, most crime in society is done by men, all range of crime. So there's something going on for boys, and obviously anything in adulthood can only start in childhood. There's something going on for our boys that psychologists and so many child development experts have been on for years and years and years and years. So I completely appreciate two things. One, I'm not the first person in the world to talk about boys. And two, this is a general and a broad conversation about boys. It's going to be very, very generalized. So please don't shoot me for the general statements I'm going to be making, okay? It's going to be very broad and very general. And of course, every single child is different, but for the purposes of supporting the specific characteristics that I've seen that parents have questions on, whether it's questions, when I'm in the classroom or when I'm working one-on-one with families or in workshops. These are the main questions that people come to me with, and hence why I'm doing it in this format. But there's going to be a lot of generalizations, so it could be that nothing of what I say this evening applies to your child at all, but it might be relevant for another boy in your life. So please forgive me if everything or some things sounded a bit too simplistic. So the three things I want to speak to you all about this evening, and hi everyone who's joining, is these are the three things that generally I have questions about. So it's emotions, an expression of emotion, aggression, and purpose, giving our boy a sense of purpose, agency, direction, responsibility. So those are the three things. Let's dive in first of all with emotions. And please, if anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to just type it in the box and then I'll answer as we go through. Don't worry about interrupting. So firstly, emotions. I think we're at a place now, in generally speaking, in Western society, where we understand that expressing and releasing emotions, crying, is very, very positive for girls, for boys, for all genders of all ages. So that's, I think, a really, really big shift we've seen in Western society. And I think that's a really, really positive thing. And so when we look at boys and our little one's crying because he's fallen over, I think most of us are on the same page now where we should never try to stop a child crying. Hi, everyone who's joining. We shouldn't stop a child from crying, whether they're a boy or a girl, any gender. And all emotions are welcome. What the message we want to convey when any child or adult is crying is, this is a safe space for you to release whatever you're releasing until you've finished releasing it. Our job is not to fix, our job is not to counteract, our job is not to explain, our job is not to, change the subject or distract them. It's really creating a safe space. And of course this comes with its challenges, because a crying child is very loud, it might be very embarrassing, we might feel triggered ourselves that something's happened, and we think they might be overreacting. For highly sensitive children who do react in a way that we might not, that can be very triggering if our child's crying. So the instinct can be to want to, shush them, calm them down. But we know there's so much great research on this, and obviously Indigenous cultures have known for a long time that expressing emotions, releasing emotions is really, really important. It's very, very healthy. So our job is to provide a safe space for it. We do not need to fix the crying. What we do is we facilitate a safe space so the child can finish the crying when they've finished the crying, when their body has literally released everything. And I'm sure you're all aware of all those amazing studies done on crying, the composition of a tear when someone's crying, is it actually releases stress hormones. It's really, really amazing. That the different, according to the emotion being felt, that the what's the best way of describing? The makeup of the tears is different, so it has such a positive impact, really releasing all the gunk that we don't need to be, the child or whoever it is doesn't need to be in their body anymore. So crying's really, really positive, and I think broadly speaking we're there, aren't we? We understand it's important. We don't anymore say, oh, boys don't cry. We don't say that he needs to be a big boy. We don't say, oh, only girls cry. We don't say any of that anymore, because those are really damaging stereotypes, and what we don't want is anything to be stuck in the body. We want any emotions to come out, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when we have young children, the ugly ones are really ugly. Once we get to the age of 4, and we're going to speak about aggression in a bit, but once we get to the age of 4 with boys, the physical side of things and the rough play can be really intense at times, and the expression of that frustration that they have, and we have to try and support them in releasing that. It can be really, really triggering that all of that's coming out, but we know that it's healthy for it to come out. We need to keep everyone safe, yes, and we need to place boundaries about what can or cannot be damaged, that's for sure. And of course the overriding concept is non-harm to any other being. Non-harm to anything else, nothing. And if we think just the 3 principles, the only 3 ground rules, or it's nice to call them, as our children get older, agreements instead of ground rules, because rules sounds a bit disciplinarian, doesn't it? But if we can say agreements instead of rules, and that's what I say with my children, with Olivia and Harry. Olivia's coming up to 7 and Harry's 4.5. And I talk about the agreements that we made, and when we're going to be going into a situation where potentially they might not succeed, or we're going to have to leave when they're still having fun, or I don't know, there's going to be, what's an example? There's going to be a screen there turned on with something that I'm not going to want them to watch, or there's going to be food that I'm not going to want them to eat, for example. We make agreements before we go into a situation, and that's really, really powerful, because it's not rules, it's something that you come up with together as a family. Anyway, I've completely digressed and told you the explanation of what an agreement is. What I was, the original point was saying is that the 3 ground rules, and we call them agreements in a Montessori community, is that we can't do anything to harm ourselves, harm others, or harm the environment. So those are the only 3 rules, that agreements that we have to uphold as members of a community. But within the container of those 3, expression of emotion is valid and is absolutely welcomed. The release that comes from a good cry, a good stamp, a good scream, a good chest beating, you know, all of those things. That's very, very positive, and it's important that we facilitate that. So emotions, better out than in for sure. And particularly for our boys, let me just go quickly a little bit into biology. So in the early years, boys are naturally, so if they're in a family with whether it's a mother or a female role model, female caregiver, then in the early years a boy naturally moves towards and seeks affection and comfort from that female figure, whether it's a mother, single mother, two mother family, mother father family, whatever the scenario is. That will be the nourishment of the feminine will be, broadly speaking, and obviously this again is a generalization, forgive me for the generalizations, will be, that's what the boy will move towards. And then from the 6 to 12 period, it's a more period where he will seek out the masculine more overtly. And so the biology part of this is when the boy then has different hormones and different things that kick in the elementary age group, they naturally draw away from their mother. And at the same time, what's happening is more, and this starts around the age of 4, more of the male hormones. It's a bit too much to say sort of testosterone like an adult man, but you've got these little drips of testosterone coming in. There's a hormonal change which accounts for why there's this first burst of aggression around age of 4 or 5, and then there's another one around the age 8. If you want to know more about this, purely about boys and the biology and what's happening at different stages and why they go from the mother to the father, if you're in that environment, why they switch allegiance, as it were, when through their childhood. That's all to do with biology. There is a great book by an Australian psychologist called Steve Biddulph, and he wrote 2 books, one called Raising Boys and one called Raising Girls, and I really recommend reading both of those. He mentions Montessori in both of them, actually, for the benefits is for all genders, which is really interesting. But he talks a lot about our unconscious bias, about the way we treat girls and the way that we treat boys, and that's really, really interesting for us to read about. He talks about the biology and what's going on in the body, which is why they reject the mother at some times, reject the father at different times. So I really recommend that book, Raising Boys by Steve Biddulph. I'll take a photo of the cover and we'll and then put it on my stories later. So the early years, most importantly, we need to allow them to release those emotions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We provide a safe space for which them to cry, in which they can cry. And I know culturally, this is not, Dubai is a very culturally diverse place, and with the different families that I work in some families, in some cultures, it's not as acceptable for boys to show their emotions. So this culturally can be quite challenging. And if you are in a family dynamic where there's things that have been done in a different way in previous generations, this can be quite a challenge, to find our voice and to empower our boys in a way where it's powerful and it's strong to cry and to show our feelings. So that can be a really that can be something for us to navigate. And we're always learning as we're going along. We're always learning as we go along. So we're not going to get it right all the time. But the main focus is that all emotions are welcome, and we provide, as the adult, no matter which parent we are, caregiver or educator, we provide a safe space in which those emotions, those feelings can come out. So that's emotions. And point 2, the second thing I want to discuss is aggression in boys, in young boys, in all boys, but aggression. And this is a really, really interesting topic, because we can, firstly, what I'd like to suggest is us reframing the word aggression. Now, if we can reframe aggression to energy and use a different word for it, call it something different, call it energy, And then we can see it in a different light. Because if you've seen any group of 4-year-old boys, 5-year-old boys, 6-year-old boys, 7-year-old boys, 8-year-old boys, until they have that impulse control, 90% of their play, generalization, will be rough play, will be rough and tumble, will be their way of greeting each other would be going to push each other over. The way of saying hello to each other will be pushing each other over. They will push and pull and take someone else's ball and all of those things. And it's not that we want to squash their boisterousness and we want to take away this energy. It's more a case of, in the Montessori class, we'd call it grace and courtesy. It's setting boundaries about what's okay and what's not okay. It's not okay to hurt someone. It's not okay to touch someone without their permission. And this is really tricky because young boys are very, very physical and they like a lot of physical affection in general. You know, my son Harry has always been very, very physical. When he was a toddler, his method of communication was biting. My best friend's son, and that thankfully passed after a couple of months. But he's a very, very physical child. Now he needs a lot of affection, a lot of cuddling, and his way of greeting his sister will be literally to run over to her and throw her on the bed or throw her on the sofa, or, you know, he doesn't do it on the floor where he would hurt her, you know, but that's his way of greeting her. So we've got to, I think, firstly, reframe aggression as energy and know that if your son is that type of boy, then that's okay. We don't want to squash the boisterousness. We want to channel the boisterousness, which we'll come to in point 3. But the most important thing is there are boundaries around that boisterousness. And so we have to really, really get creative of what is okay, what is not okay. We can't be saying, no, 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 you can't do that, you can't do that, if we're not providing another outlet. We've got to have a balance. So we have this whole thing at my place. We have a small apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment. So any ball inside the house is a disaster. It's going to knock over like every single ornament. Everything is going to be, you know, I think in a bigger house it's not as stressful, right? But in my house, if a ball gets kicked, then something's going to get broken. So I have this boundary. You can play with the ball on the terrace, or you can go to the park and play, and it's challenged every single day. But I can't just say. So the point I'm trying to make is I can't just say no balls. I can say, you can play with the ball outside, you can play with the ball in the park. And if we continue to not reach this agreement, I'm going to have to remove the ball. And it's not a threat, it's not a punishment, but we've made this agreement that it's not safe to play with the ball inside. Would you like me to take it to the terrace, or shall we go out to the park? And that's what I mean about these boundaries of what's okay and what's not okay. It's not that we are they're not naughty for trying to kick the ball inside. They aren't doing it deliberately. They have a need, and it's our role to facilitate that need to the best of our abilities, but be very, very clear in our needs as well. And this is something like nonviolent communication comes in really beautifully, where we express our need. You know, I could say in that scenario, I feel really frustrated when you play with a ball in the house because I'm worried something's going to get broken. Do you remember our agreement that we'd only use a ball outside in the park? Something like that. So it's really, really important that we can make these agreements with our children, particularly our boys, because they will follow directions. Particularly, we're talking about 4 or 5-year-olds. They will follow instructions, but we've got to say it in the right way. It's like with any other human. If we can say things with compassion and with respect and with humor, it's going to go down a lot better than if we say it in a snarly way or a snappy way or a rude way. So the way in which we approach this is really, really important. So our agreements around any type of physical behavior, when they want to wrestle on the bed, Olivia and Harry, or Olivia and Harry and a friend when they come over for a play date, it's they'll say they're going to do it, or they'll start doing it, and I'll say, hang on, have we made the agreement? So what are the rules? What are the agreements what you've made? No hair pulling, no biting, no hurting of anyone else, no kicking, whatever it is, but they make up what the agreements are. And then, you know, they make up the code word. If anyone's hurt, anyone doesn't like it, they shout stop, or whatever the code word is. But the point is that they make up the agreements. We're not imposing anything on them, and it's got to be really enforced by us. You know, we've got to keep that door open. We've got to be able to hear what's going on. So if there is, someone does overstep a boundary, someone does go too far, and things get out of hand. So it's not a judgment on this. It's natural that things get out of hand, and unfortunately, children will get hurt when there's wrestling and rough play when they're little. It gets a lot smoother when they're a bit older, but when they're 4, 5 and the impulse control isn't quite there, it will happen. But again, it's freeze, stop, someone's got hurt, stop the situation straight away, come back to the agreements, check is everyone okay, come back to the agreements, and then we can resume. But it's really very much giving them a framework, a really solid framework where we're not shaming the boisterous behaviour. We know that this energy has to go somewhere. And if they want to do rough play, they can. We shouldn't stamp it out of them. It's that what are the agreements that we're going to keep so we keep everyone safe. And I say that a lot with Olivia. It's Olivia and Harry. It's my responsibility. It's all of our responsibility to keep each other safe. So what are you going to do to keep each other safe? You can play this. You can climb up there. You can run as fast as you like, but what are you going to do to keep each other safe? So it's giving the child a sense of ownership and a sense of responsibility within that community, whether it's your home or with friends, you know, with their siblings, cousins, whatever it might be. It's really giving children from a young age the sense of consideration for other people, consideration for other people's feelings, and consideration for what's going on in the environment around them. Children are naturally egocentric. Young children can only think about themselves and how the way that they interact with the world. It's not possible for them to see things from another perspective. That starts being developed from about the age of 3 onwards, between the age of 3 and 6, but it's still a work in progress. Even beyond the age of 6, it's a work in progress. So it's really, really for us to help develop those skills within our child of looking at things. We make agreements to keep everyone safe. If someone's not happy, let's come back to the drawing board and make up some new agreements. What worked, what didn't work that time, what can work better, who needs to be heard, all of those things, so that this type of rough play, the wrestling, the rough and tumble, can happen. And it needs to happen, but it's got to be in a way that no one gets hurt. And then this is sort of into the beginnings of consent, isn't it? This is into... Hi, Gatanya. This is into the beginnings of consent. If every single time our child, our son or another boy that we know is being aggressive, let's use that word, energy, it's coming back and stopping it every single time, knowing that it's not... it's often not something, if they're younger than 6, their impulse control isn't there. It's not something that they can necessarily stop, but we've got to have these firm boundaries. Every single time something happens, it's stopping. And as I said, it's Montessori, it's called grace and courtesy. It's stopping. That's not okay. That person was pushed. You pushed that person, or you hit that person, or that person was tripped over. That's not okay. And then there's really bringing the child back every single time, and talking about respect or respect of body boundaries. And as I said, this is something with my son I'm talking about a lot, with a situation he's dealing with a friend, and the behaviour that he's picked up from that friend has now come home with him, and he's behaving in that way to Olivia, and he's behaving in that way to me. So this topic of aggression is something that is really very delicate for me at the moment. I'm really, really living it at the moment because of how Harry is responding to what's going on around him. So, and every time, like on the way back from school today, I think we had to stop and pull over the car 3 times because he started being aggressive. And every time, and we're giving a friend a lift home from school as well, and every time it happened, I pulled over And I took Harry out of the car, and then we just went, so we weren't in front of Olivia and the other friend, and we just talked it through, and I said, look, what happened there, it's absolutely safe, it's okay for you to express yourself, it's okay for you to be angry, but I can't let you hurt anyone, I can't let you hit me. If you throw things or hit me when I'm driving, it's really dangerous. And it's really using that very, you know, it's not being angry, but it's being so firm that there's no doubt, you know. We have to speak the words we're speaking with such conviction, you know, and it takes practice as well. And sometimes he'll laugh and try and run away, and I just hold him in that spot saying, no, we cannot get back in the car, we cannot move on with the day until we've spoken about this. And when I use that really, really stern voice with him, I will always make sure I'm at his level, I'm looking into his eyes, and I'm holding his hands if I need to. But if he doesn't need to be restrained, I'll say, come on, let's put our hands on our heart, and we'll stand there for a moment and we'll connect, touching each other's hearts, and I'll reassure him again, you're safe. It's safe for you to be angry. You can be as angry as you like, but it's not okay to hurt me or anyone. And it's really that firmness, but reaffirming that bond. I'm not saying he's a bad kid. I'm not saying that he's naughty. I'm not shaming his aggression. The boundary needs to be there so that it doesn't continue, so it doesn't become a pattern of behaviour. But I've got to do it with love. I've got to do it and maintain that connection, because if I do the shouting, we all shout sometimes, okay? I'm not saying that I don't shout, but if we seek to be punitive in our approach, then it doesn't create a better behaviour. It creates actually a worse behaviour over time. But keeping that connection, keeping that loving connection when we're being really firm is very, very powerful for a child. They want to be connected to us. They need to be connected to us, and they need to have our approval. So if we are able to, with practice, get this this loving firmness, I think that is the right word, that loving firmness and energy with which to deal with aggression in this way, it can really, really benefit us. But it takes practice and time, and I'm still seriously learning, because sometimes I still get really annoyed as well. But we're all learning, so don't worry if you get it wrong. Sometimes you won't respond quickly enough, sometimes you'll respond too quickly, sometimes you'll find the right words, and sometimes you won't, and that's okay. All of those things are okay. But mainly with the aggression, it's, can we reframe it? We can reframe it in a way that it's energy, it's normal, it's natural. We don't want to squash boisterousness out of our boys. We definitely don't want to do that, but it needs to be channeled. They need to know that it's okay to express themselves, because the problem with the way that Western society has portrayed boys, that boys are only permitted, and men are only permitted one emotion, and that's anger. And so if we're suppressing all this stuff when they're aggressive, when they're little, this is just going to come out as more and more and more anger, because it's just stuffed down rather than coming out. So it's, what are these ways we can help them release this anger when they're little? And that can be drumming, that can be tapping on themselves, that can be thrashing their hands and feet on the bed. We do that a lot on the mattress. That can be so many different ways. It can be kicking a football really hard. There's so many different ways of doing it. But if we can just see this in such a way where it's an opportunity in the early years to really, really guide behaviour that's coming afterwards, that can really, really serve us well, and it can really help our boys with empathy and with sympathy for others, and so that when they come into that age where they are less affectionate with their mother, with the female figure in their life, they've still got that heart and they've still got that connection, and that empathy will just grow and grow. But it's really when that balance of boundaries and love is just so magical, and it's definitely a daily practice, and I'm not there in any way, shape or form yet. A really powerful thing that I've said to Harry and Olivia recently is that we treat others the way in which we want to be treated. And so if we're rough with others, then they're going to be rough with us. And if we shout at others, then they're going to shout at us, and all of those things. And it sounds really simple, but they do get it. It's really very much of this the beginnings of this interdependence of life on earth, and them understanding that. Olivia, obviously, because she's older, she's doing this in cosmic education at school, but Harry, at his age, at 4.5, he's more than ready to understand how his actions impact on other people. So it's the beginnings of all of this, and it's really fascinating to see it unfold with our own children, before our eyes. And the third thing I wanted to speak about this evening regarding boys, and with the two things combined, emotions and aggression, it's really, really important for us that we understand, particularly as the majority of primary caregivers are women still, rightly or wrongly, and it's really important for us as women to understand that a boy and a man's drive is to be helpful, to be purposeful. And so no matter the age of our child, whether we've got a 2-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 14-year-old, boys want to be purposeful. They want to help. And it's really us being able to find that sweet spot where we can redirect behaviour that really ignites in them that desire that they have to help. All boys, all men seek to have a purpose, seek to give in some way. And so what I practice with Harry, and what I invite you into as well, is that when there is what we perceive as misbehaviour, can we invite our boy into some purposeful work? Can we invite him into helping, into contributing? So instead of scolding him from that misbehaviour or removing privileges, what it is it's more of, okay, I know you want to help. If that physical behaviour has come in and they've hurt someone, so of course we put the boundary in about hurting straight away. And then we go to the next level of connection, which is, I can see you really want to help in some way. Let me find you something really useful to do. Come with me. I'd like you to help me with something. So really, really giving them that sense of purpose. Often a boy will be running around the room, running around the classroom just because he doesn't have a purpose. What direction can we give him? All boys want to contribute. All boys want to help in some way. They want to be useful, want to feel as if they're useful. And so instead of seeing this aggression, this energy as a negative thing, can we see it as a positive thing? How can we channel it? That's what's really, really important. If we can develop a sense of purpose in our boys from a young age, then that is a really, really powerful gift. This sense of purpose, this sense of personal responsibility from a young age. As I said a few moments ago, we treat others how we want to be treated ourselves. There is a lot of responsibility that comes with living in a community, that comes with contributing and playing a part. And whilst we're letting them be children, it's really, really important that we role model to them and show them the power of community and how it's give and take, and how we have our 3 agreements of not harming ourselves, others, or the environment. All of these things, these building blocks of personal responsibility, the building blocks of knowing purpose, these building blocks of finding out who we truly are. This starts in the early years, and it's so, so important for boys because they really, really want to help. They really, really want to make a difference. And if we can take this, what we see as aggression, and channel that, that's what's really, really powerful for us, and something that we can really, really develop in a powerful way. And it's the change in language. I can see you're looking for something to do. I'd love for us to do this together. I'd love for us to hang the washing together. I can see when they're doing something that's undesirable, when they're misbehaving, instead of scolding, our first sentence can be, I can see you really want to help in some way. I've got this for you. I really love you to help in this way. really, really focus on the help. I can see you really, really want to help, because that in itself is an affirmation, you know. Over time, even if they still are pulling the cat's tail, as Harry was doing this afternoon, over time they understand. They will, if we can do this enough, that I can see you want to help. I can see that you're looking to be useful in some way and you just can't find the right words. They are going to connect those words of wanting to be helpful, want to be useful, for this tearing about and this and this being crazy and this being loud or boisterous or too rough, what have you. They're going to connect the dots, that what they need in those moments is direction, and they're going to be able to find that within themselves at a later date. And this is obviously laying the foundations for, you know, the prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. That's problem solving and reasoning, isn't fully developed until age 24. So this is really, this is a lifetime's work, these foundations. But see if we can give our boys purpose, a sense of responsibility. They crave a sense of purpose and they thrive on responsibility. Even young boys laying the table, emptying the dishwasher, washing the dishes, sweeping the floor, they really, really love that. So it's really important that we honor and recognize that, and when there is misbehavior, that we guide it. It's not a punishment. It's not trying to close them down. Our instinct is often, isn't it, to limit freedom when there's misbehavior, but actually we want to expand them. We want to show them what the possibilities are, because if they are misbehaving, behaving undesirably, they're not feeling great about themselves as it is, and we're going to make them feel even worse by being punitive. What we can do is support them, and I know this is a quantum leap in thinking, is when they're misbehaving, know that they're feeling really bad about themselves. So what can we offer to help them feel better about themselves? And that's not praise or affirmations, that's them being useful, making a difference, making a contribution. So yeah, my last point there is the I'm the boss approach that we might give as a parent or caregiver doesn't work. We want to invite them into leadership by the language that we use and the approach that we have. We want to invite them into leadership. We can't be, if we try and be the boss, particularly in the 12 to the 6 to 12 age group, we're going to fall flat on our face. If we can invite them into leadership, into responsibility, into purpose, into direction, rather than trying to be the boss that oversees them, that is such a powerful place for us to be, actually, because it takes a lot on our learning journey, and for our child as well. Let me know if you have any questions. And thank you so much for joining. And my journal prompt tomorrow will be linked to this live. I'll have a look through and see what we can pick up from there, what little gems we can pick up from there. But thank you so much for joining me, everyone, this evening. If you have any questions, answer now. Otherwise, I will just recap really quickly. For boys, we talked about emotions, we talked about aggression, and we talked about purpose. We have reframed aggression to be energy. We have acknowledged that physical rough behavior, rough play is developmentally normal for boys and should be celebrated. In equal measure, boundaries, not hurting anyone, not hurting ourselves, and not hurting the environment are 3 agreements that we have, the basics of the environment in which we live. All emotions are good, even the ones we don't want to see or hear about. And lastly, all boys and men crave a sense of purpose. So redirecting that aggression or that bad behavior into purpose, into contributing, is immensely powerful. Thank you so much for joining, and this will be on my feed hopefully in a few minutes, but maybe about half an hour, if I can get it uploaded. And thank you so much, all of you, for watching this evening, and don't hesitate to keep sending in your lives when you would like to, when you have other questions. My book, The Montessori Mission, is coming on strong. We are, my editor and I are working to the end of this month, so that's next week, to complete all the written parts, and then I'm going to go through and do all the design and the referencing and what have you next month. So really hoping that you'll join me for that book launch. When we do that, we'll do an online book launch as soon as we have launched. I'm going to self-publish on Amazon, so I'm really excited about that. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to DM me. I love hearing from you, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.